Prince Baji is born to giant parents, but is still the smallest person to ever walk the kingdom of Bos. He is weak, deaf, and naive, but still holds the biggest courage to walk with his head held high. His day goes about running around the field and playing with the animals that roam the land of his father. Because of his handicaps, Baji doesn't play with other children his age and younger because there may be misunderstandings between them. Since Baji is usually a victim to the people's ridicule. While going about his day, he meets a shadow creature called Cage who instantly holds him at knife point in an attempt to steal his clothes. Baji, after first struggling to understand Cage, reads his lips and starts to carry out the orders given to him by Cage. Cage tells him to take off his clothes and also do it tomorrow at the same spot, and Baji does so unhesitantly. The next day, Baji goes to meet Cage at the agreed spot while wearing more clothes so that Cage can rob him of them. Cage expresses that Baji is a dimwit for nonchalantly doing all he's told. Baji then tells him that he appreciates his company and that he only cares for it, and the two become friends. Meeting with Baji's faint and closed-off demeanor, Cage aids Baji in going home naked. One day, Baji takes Cage home and gets confronted by his stepmother, Queen Hyling, who ridicules him even more for always coming back home naked. She asks Baji to get dressed and go see his father. While dressing, Baji cries to himself for all the ridicule he has received for the day, but quickly puts on a brave face while Cage is watching him. Cage feels sorry for him and starts to emotionally grow closer to and fonder of him. Baji heads to see his father, King Bos, who ranks at the 7th place on the ranking system. The king tells Baji that he must become strong enough to rule his kingdom and orders Damaz to teach him his swordsmanship. Damaz accepts and goes to do just that. While in training, Baji's young half-brother, who is bigger and well-developed, Prince Data, appears to challenge Damaz. They spar as Baji admires both Damaz and Data. Damaz loses to Data, whose strength he likens to that of King Bos's, and Baji takes his place to defend him with his own sword. The match is announced in the house, and everyone interested comes to watch it play out. Data attacks first, but Baji dodges countless times until he is able to counterattack by landing his soft blow on Data's head, impressing everyone watching in doubt, including Cage, who cheers him on every time Baji dodges and softly counterattacks Data. Data gets mad. Damaz stops them and signs to Baji, who stops dodging altogether and gets beat up by Data while he cries mid-match. It continues to get brutal for Baji until Apias, a sword of the king who has been watching from the roof, throws a spear that stops the fight, making Data the winner of the match. Baji sustains wounds from the match and gets bedridden and covered in bandages. He remembers the words Damaz signed to him before he stopped dodging Data's attacks, that his way of fighting is not the swordsmanship of a king, and he starts to crawl out of bed to a normal-sized sword and tries to pick it up. He fails to pick it up as he is too small and doesn't have the strength. He cries his eyes out until Cage throws a coin at him. He turns around to face Cage, but wipes his tears away and acts brave so as not to embarrass himself. Cage tells him he has nothing to be ashamed of and that his swordsmanship is uniquely his own. To cut the embarrassment short, Baji shows Cage where his clothes are, and Cage tells him that he won't be taking anything from him anymore since he is on his side. From then on, Cage stays by Baji's side while Baji sleeps, and when he is about to leave, someone comes into the room. It is shown by the feet and the dress at ankles that she is a woman. As Cage is about to think she'll do the worst, she puts her hands above the unconscious Baji as they start to glow green magically, slowly healing Baji's injuries. Cage leaves knowing that Baji is safe despite his previous suspicions. He meets Babin, a snake handler and Data's swordsmanship teacher, whom Cage had met when he visited the castle where Baji lies. Babin wanted to execute Cage for being a shadow creature belonging to a clan of assassins, but Cage had escaped, and now they meet again. The next day, King Bos dies, and his will is read in front of his corpse. They announce the successor of the throne to be the first prince of the kingdom, Prince Baji, and this shocks everyone. After Queen Hyling defies the wishes of her late king and rips apart the will, Prince Data is presented as the new king to the kingdom's people. Baji is hurt by this and runs away to cry his heart out. After confronting Cage again, Bibin goes to tell Baji that Cage has left for a journey and they will never see each other again. Baji goes to seek out Cage on his own. He goes to the snake lair where a giant snake he saved when he was younger, called Mitsumata, lives. Mitsumata tells Baji that his master, Bibin, has apprehended Cage, but let him go on an important journey that he can't tell Baji about. But he also assures him that it is not for the sake of harming him. Baji remembers how he was chosen to become king, but was opposed as he was weak and frail, and how Cage had promised to be by his side, but is now on a journey to help him. Baji sets off to follow Cage. He goes to speak with the queen, and she refuses him the journey for the same reasons as always. He then decides to run away by climbing out a window from high up in the castle. The queen comes in just in time before he lets go of the makeshift rope he put together. Dorsh, the queen's shield, pulls him up, but Baji struggles, causing the pieces of the rope to untie and make him fall to the ground. Queen Hyling hurries to Baji and finds him unconscious and starts to groan loudly and glow in a green light, tearing her dress and putting her hands on Baji to heal his wounds. Baji remembers her from the night of the match when she went in and healed him while he slept. While she is left alone to rest, Hyling remembers her first meeting with Baji and the struggle she had to go through to build the kind of relationship she has with Baji. This makes her a little softer, granting Baji the permission to go on the journey to learn and gain experience and become stronger. She arms him with his teacher Damaz and an aide for his personal care, Hokuro. Baji sets off on his journey. The trio first makes it to a village where Baji runs from Hokuro to go have fun, seeing puppets, buying this and that at the market, and sleeping by the fountains. He is later found by Damaz and Hokuro without his bag that had all the important things, and Hokuro gets the heat for losing Baji in the first place. The trio then get dinner to calm down and think about a way forward. They commence the journey the next day and find Baji's bag lying on the street with everything intact. They decide to continue on their journey and walk all the plain valleys and dangerous forests. Baji gets distracted by a butterfly while they're walking and follows it. He falls into a pit guarded by spears and meets the spearman who owns it. The man kills a wild pig and feasts with Baji, and they dance together when a creation of new animals happens from the dead one that they've eaten. After that, the man explains the process to Baji and decides he wants to sacrifice him for the creation of more new lives from his body. Baji manages to escape the man and gets together with his company. They set up camp to rest for the night. While eating, Baji's meat is stabbed by knives thrown from a distance that the three of them can't detect. In the morning, they see a pack of dogs lying dead on the ground from eating Baji's stabbed meat. It was poisoned. After burying the dogs, they go to another town that has a hole of fire in the ground called the Gates of Hell, a pit into the underworld. Damaz tells Hokuro to find a place for them to rest for the night, and he takes Baji to see the Gates of Hell. When they get there, Damaz pushes Baji into the fire pit and leaves him there to die. But Baji lands safely on the floor of the pit while marveling at how so. Cage appears from his bag and the two reunite in tears of friendship. Cage tells Baji that he's been with him from the moment he fell off the window trying to escape to the moment he wanted to bite into the poisoned meat. He tells him that he was sent to accompany Baji by Bibin the snake handler to meet the man that will make him strong. The journey they are about to take leads them deeper into the underworld to meet this man. They head down toward their destination, but Baji starts to smell gas, which passes them out. Two men emerge from the smoke and take Baji and Cage on the back of their rides. They are taken to another kingdom, a kingdom of the underworld. When they come to their senses, they meet the ruler of the kingdom, King Desha, who ranks second in the system. He starts to make fun of Baji for his shortcomings and the fact that his younger brother is king and not him. He asks about their intentions, and Cage explains that they are there to see a man who can turn an ordinary man into a man of strength fit for a king. King Desha admits that it's him they're looking for, and that he needs to test the skill level of the person he is to train. One of his knights, who transported Baji and Cage to the kingdom, stands forward to test Baji. Baji is told to land a strike on the knight, who happens to be a captain of the Order of the Underworld. Known for their strength and relentlessness, Baji gives it his all, throwing his soft strikes at the guard, who, after realizing the situation, stands with his guard down. Dessa ridicules Baji one more time for his weakness before Cage defends him again. Cage tells Dessa that Baji's strength lies within his ability to dodge attacks precisely. Dessa then tells Baji to not let the guard hit him, and he doesn't. He dodges the attacks with precision and speed that impresses the knights in the room. When the knight fighting Baji stops and admires his speed, they all look to Dessa for approval. Dessa says he is still not impressed. He says Baji can survive a battle but can't win it, as he won't be able to get through the enemy's armor. Even after Cage's persuasion for Dessa to teach Baji, he refuses, saying that he can't refine talent that's non-existent. The duo is ordered to be kicked out by King Dessa. Cage encourages Baji to not give up and tells him that he will become strong if he works hard. Baji gets motivated and tries to pick up a large rock but fails. He then tries a smaller rock and still fails. He cries when he realizes that he is indeed absolutely feeble. Cage goes to comfort him. The knight whom Baji had fought with tells them to take the letter of recommendation they had brought with them to the rightful person. When they ask who, they are told that it is the king's younger brother, Prince Despah. King Dessa was just fooling them to amuse himself and didn't let them know any sooner because he is in rivalry with Despah. The pair thank the knights and head to seek Prince Despah. They introduce themselves and state the purpose of their visit. Despah asks for compensation for his services, and after Cage pays, he invites them inside. He then reads Baji's hands and finds that Baji is weak and doesn't have even a stray vein of strength in his body. But still, he takes him under his wing to train him to his full potential. Baji and Cage head to bed after familiarizing themselves with the household, and Baji wakes up early in the morning the next day. He does housework and eats a breakfast that only he can eat since he's a baby giant. Despah then gets ready to train him. Day in and day out, Baji trains with determination. One day, while Cage was cleaning outside, he hears a loud bang that rumbles the ground. He rushes to the room Baji is training in, where he's prohibited to enter. He asks about the loud noise he heard and if Despah and Baji are okay. When Despah opens the door to answer Cage's questions, Cage sees a glimpse of Baji posed in front of a rock that has been split in half. The door slowly closes on his face, leaving him wondering about Baji's progress. Baji finally completes his training, having fully mastered the way of Despah's training, the Despah arts. Baji, Cage, and Despah make their way to celebrate Baji's training completion. As they head out the door, Cage notices that Baji has a sword by his side and asks about it. Baji swings it and impresses Cage, but when he takes it out of the sheath, Cage gets utterly disappointed by its slim, needle-like look. Despah confronts Cage about his skepticism, telling him that giving Baji a needle and calling it a sword is not going to help anyone. Cage apologizes to Baji, and they head to their celebration. While they eat, three monsters who are citizens of the underworld approach the trio and start to pick a fight. They mock Despah for his looks, and he sends one flying with a punch, which he instantly regrets. The monsters get back up and start to beat him up, but Baji doesn't sit it out. Seeing that Despah is ganged up on, he tries to defend but is easily pushed to the side. He gets back up and, after dodging a few attacks, lands a blow as soft as a daisy on the monster's chin. The monster, after a second, starts losing his balance and passes out, making Baji's punch a knockout. Baji continues to defend and finally draws his weapon, the needle sword. After dodging a few attacks from the monster, in a flash of lightning, he defeats his opponent, who falls to the ground screaming in pain. Cage panics that Baji killed the monster, but Despah checks his vitals and finds that he is just passed out as before. Despah then explains to Cage the science behind Baji's weak attacks that still yield great results. The placement and timing of the punch on that certain spot, and the stabbing of the needle without causing extensive damage to the brain or blood vessels. Cage celebrates Baji's victory, and the three head home. On the way home, Despah tells Baji and Cage to head on first as he needs to attend to something. He quickly runs around the corner to meet the monsters whom Baji had just defeated and pays them for their participation in the fight. Later at night, when Baji and Cage are sitting outside, Cage decides to finally tell Baji what has been going on in his castle, having been told by Bibin. After hearing all of this, Cage asks Baji what he will do. Baji, remembering how Damas had betrayed him, gets scared that Queen Hyling may do him in. He starts to take a walk, and Cage follows him to ask about his lack of courage. Baji then starts to punch himself and hit his head on the ground in order to gain his courage back and set for home. Baji and Cage bid their goodbyes to Despa to return home. Despa encourages Baji to love himself as he is and continue to be as courageous as he is. Knights of the Order of the Underworld arrive as the three men are still saying their goodbyes and offer to transport Baji back to his kingdom. Despa explains to them that it is because criminals of the underworld have infiltrated the kingdom, and King Desa has deployed the knights to take Baji home and capture the criminals. The knights explain who the criminals are, and Cage continues to encourage Baji with his newfound strength through the Despa arts. The knights continue to explain to Cage and Baji how the criminals may have gotten into the kingdom. Cage and Baji finally arrive at the kingdom to find a criminal that has left the castle to attack the civilians. The criminal is said to be one of the most dangerous, as even Despa said for the knights not to fight him until he arrives. The criminal, known as Alchem the Sword of the Underworld, has cut up the people, and is now to face the captain of the Underworld Order who is going against Despa. When Baji wants to partake in the fight, the knight stops him, as Despa said that Baji would be defeated by Alchem if he were to fight him. The knight tells Baji to head for the castle to help protect Queen Hyling. Baji and Cage make their way to the castle in haste. Just when Jigan is swinging Mitsumata from side to side while he is trying to protect the queen, he was hitting Mitsumata to the ground. He suddenly stops and falls on the ground himself. Queen Hyling is surprised by this, seeing Cage and then Baji appear who start crying for Mitsumata. Cage goes to take the queen's hand and leads her to heal Mitsumata, but she tells him that she has exhausted her power and potions. Cage gives her potions to refuel her strength to continue healing Mitsumata. She heals him, but she gets distracted when she sees Baji facing Jigan, who has gotten up. Jigan swings his hammer at Baji, but Baji easily breaks it. Jigan tries to step his giant foot on Baji and crush him under it, but Baji stabs him under the foot. Jigan retracts his foot and passes out. Queen Hyling remembers when Baji was helping to put out a fire that had engulfed a house in the town. He had this small cup that didn't carry enough water to do any impact, but his brother Data could lift a large barrel to carry enough water. Queen Hyling cries at how Baji has become strong to stand up to monsters and criminals. Cage ties up Jigan after he shows Baji that Mitsumata has been healed by the queen. Baji hugs the queen but quickly lets go. The queen then brings him in for a proper hug. Queen Hyling asks who Cage is, and he says he's Baji's best pal through thick and thin, but she doesn't buy it. So Mitsumata vouches for him and his loyalty to Baji. Hyling then apologizes. Baji sees that the animals which Doris was fighting are hurt, and he doesn't like seeing that, so Queen Hyling heals them all. When they wake up, they don't attack. Jigan wakes up too and breaks the rope they had tied him with and bows down to Baji. Recognizing him as his master and friend, Baji is told that he needs to face Damaz in the basement, where they need to pass to return the animals back to the underworld. Despite showing a little doubt, Baji and Cage get on the move. Seeing the long way down, Jigan jumps down the stairs to cut the distance. He lands right in front of Damaz and Desa. Hakiro was hiding just around the corner. Baji starts to panic and Damaz starts to cry for him. Cage tries to cheer him up, but when he feels his body, he can tell that Baji is overwhelmed by all his negative emotions. He starts to blame Damaz, since it was him who betrayed Baji. Damaz tries to kill himself by jumping off the high stairs where he was standing on, but he fails dismally. Hakiro tells him to get himself together. He regains control finally. Desa sees his criminal Jigan, and he orders his knights to take him. Jigan fights back when they charge at him, even when Cage tells him to stop because they aren't there to fight. He continues and gets cornered. Desi strikes Jigan with lightning, and he falls down. Baji and Cage see all of that, and Baji decides to defend him, but Damaz stands in front of him to fight in his place. Cage asks Desa what he's doing there. He explains that he wants Mirange, the person who stole his criminals. Baji hears the name Miranjo and remembers that she's the woman who killed his mother. He witnessed it when it happened. He cries at this painful memory, but he smiles when Cage asks about it. Baji tries to shield Jigan so that Desa doesn't hurt him, But Dessa explains that Jigon is a criminal of the underworld and told them how exactly he became a criminal. Jigon wakes up angry at Dessa and charges at him. Dessa tries to strike him with his lightning, but Baji jumps to his defense with his tiny sword, and he dispels the lightning. Dessa then charges his bat-like weapon with lightning to end the fight really quickly, but Baji flails his hands and throws his sword away to not continue the fight. He tries to communicate with Dessa, but Dessa can't understand him. So Lage comes to help explain the situation. He explains that Baji is not trying to fight Dessa, but to stop him from taking Jigon because he's their friend. Dessa refuses to let them have Jigon and explains that he wants Jigon in the Order of the Underworld as per Auken's wish when he was still humane. Baji points his sword at Dessa and stands ready to fight him for Jigon. Jigon remembers the kindness of Baji, and he tells him that Baji has his heart, but he has to return home. The animals that Baji, Cage, and Jigon were escorting back to the underworld show up and start attacking Dessa, but he easily stops them. He orders them and the rest of his men to return home. They do so, and Baji waves goodbye to Jigon. Damaz and Hikiro come before Baji afterwards and bow down to him. He starts to panic once more and turns his back on them. They apologize, but only Cage talks to them. They ask who he is, and he says that he's Baji's friend, and Hikiro starts crying, relieved that Baji wasn't all alone all this time. He had a friend. Cage also confesses that when Damaz pushed Baji into the pit, he was the one who saved him. Damaz cries hearing that Baji wasn't injured in the fall. Cage asks Baji if he can forgive them since they aren't all that bad. Baji looks at Damaz one last time, remembering when he used to laugh with him while training, until his face changed when he pushed him into the pit. He continues freaking out and runs up the stairs to get away from them. Cage curses at Damaz and Hikiro before following after Baji and trying to cheer him up so that his hatred for Damaz doesn't eat his good heart away. He races him to the top of the stairs. They get outside and start arguing about who won their fun little game. Baji takes a head start for another race. They race until they find Apias, who was collapsed on the ground. They check his vitals and find that he's still alive, and they decide to take him to Queen Hyling. He wakes up and tells them the truth about Miranjo. He tells them that Miranjo's plan is to kill the queen and destroy the kingdom of Boss, so she and Boss can continue their journeys together. He also tells them that she has helped Boss come back to life, and that his soul is in Data's body. He stands up and tries to stop Baji from interfering, as his duty is to carry out Miranjo's orders. He sees Baji's aura expanding and realizes that Baji has become strong after training under Despa. He lets Baji and Cage go and head to the castle. While they run, Cage tells Baji that they should start with the criminals and then take care of Boss. After Baji remembers times with his father and starts to panic a little, Cage tells him not to doubt himself, and he regains his confidence back. They see Auken, who was called by Miranjo to the castle. Baji and Cage follow him there and see Auken, and together, alongside the Marzuku in black, two more criminals from the underworld. Baji and Cage hide and witness the four of them turn on each other. Zaku sees trouble with Auken and pushes Black to Auken's sword. Black is slashed and killed. Zaku runs for the castle wall, and Baji follows to stop him from running. Auken also follows them up the wall. Zaku gets scared that both his opponents are very strong, but since one can show mercy, he pretends to cry, not wanting to die, and he begs for mercy so that Baji feels sorry for him. But when Baji gives it to him, he blows his purple poison smoke on him. Baji is not affected by it, since the giant race is immune to poison. Baji finally stands up to Zaku, but Zaku jumps down, seeing that Auken is behind him. Baji follows him down, and before Zaku can go anywhere, Baji slashes him with his small rapier and ties him up with ropes. Falcon comes down to face Baji, and their fight begins with incredible speed. Baji dodges Auken's attacks and counters with just scratching his armor, which only tickles him. They continue to fight, and this time Baji aims for Auken's sword and breaks it into pieces, but it quickly repairs itself since it's made of his blood, and his blood regenerates no matter what. Miranjo tells Cage that Baji can't defeat Auken because Auken is immortal, and the only way to not get killed by him is to run away. Amira talks to Cage and advises Baji to run up to the top of the castle wall to avoid Alkin. He does, and Alkin shifts his focus to Zaku now. Baji comes down the wall to defend Zaku. Cage asks who the mirror is, and the person tells him she's Miranjo. Cage holds Miranjo at knife point, threatening her for causing this whole mess, while Baji continues his fight with Alkin so that Alkin doesn't hurt Zaku. Cage tries to interfere, but Baji tells him to run away. But Cage refuses. When Baji is tired from all the fighting with Alkin, Alkin tries to slash him, but a spear is thrown between the two. It gets hit by lightning, and it stops the fight. The Despair, the captain of the Underworld Order, appears. Despair tells Baji that he fought well so far, and that he should stop now. Cage continues to support that Baji did indeed fight well, because he wants to make sure that no one is hurt. This makes Miranjo remember her kind mother, and she starts to feel a little guilty. Falcon tries to stand ready to fight Despair, the captain, but his efforts fail, and he tries to run away. Suddenly, Alkin gets hit by Despair's lightning strike. He doesn't die from the strike. He goes for Despair, the captain. The captain fights him with a dagger, but Alkin stabs him anyways. This bat tries to fight Alkin with his brain while he reminisces about Alkin when he was still a brother who was much more humane. Alkin tells him telepathically that he doesn't need saving yet. Despair was just stabbed in the chest with Alkin's sword. Seeing Despair fall down, Baji gets angry and goes on a rampage to break Alkin's armor, but Alkin gets back up to continue the fight, and his blood repairs his armor and sword. When Alkin shifts his focus to Cage, Baji attacks him from behind. Alkin stabs him in the leg and gets ready to kill him. Cage freaks out when he sees that his best friend is about to be killed. He rushes to them and goes on a rampage. He starts to grow bigger and bigger, and he swallows Alkin. But Alkin breaks out of Cage with his sword, which kills Cage in the process, and he approaches Baji and stabs him. Miranjo decides to move from her mirror form, transfers her soul into the corpse of Red, another criminal she stole from the underworld. She goes to heal Cage, and in the process Despair and Baji are transported to the realm between life and death. Cage is crossing over to the afterlife. Cage happily crosses over to where his mother is calling him from, but Miranjo appears and stops him. She asks him if there are no ties he has left behind, and he suddenly remembers Baji. Cage tells his mother that he can't join her yet, as he has business to take care of, and his mother cheers him on. Back in the living world, Mitsumata sees a wounded Baji and starts to panic. Alkin sees him and sees food. He approaches him, and Mitsu tries to defend himself, but Alkin stabs him and drinks his blood. He tries to stab him a second time, but he's stopped by Babin. Dorsch, Damaz, and Apias appear as well to help out. They try their hardest, starting with Damaz, but they can't bring Alkin down. Baji sees his mother while still witnessing Cage's crossover. Baji's mother and Miranjo's mother both appear to talk with Miranjo, and they make her realize that she was wrong all along. Baji cries when he sees his mom, but he also shows that he's happy. Despair tells him that whatever is happening won't end happily. When Miranjo creates a wind to sweep them all back to living, Baji finally gets to see Miranjo's terrible past and trauma. He cries for her sad story. Despair tells him that he will have to make a decision to kill her when the time comes, but Baji shakes his head. Cage and Despair finally awake and dispel after seeing that the Big Four have been defeated by Alkin. Boss says that the captain of the Underworld Order is the one who can continue fighting since he knows a certain technique, but Alkin stabs him instantly. Baji tries to stand up to Alkin after he tries to approach Cage again. Alkin charges at Baji, but King Boss and Data's body appear and hit Baji with his club. He continues to hit everyone from his kingdom, but soon he heals them. At the same time, Baji and Cage start to celebrate, but soon have to stop since Alkin is still alive. And when he gets up, Baji tries to stand up to him, but King Boss stands in front of him. Boss continues to fight Alkin, who keeps getting back up after being beaten up by Boss. All this time Boss is figuring out how to prevent Alkin from getting back up. He finally takes out a massive boulder from the ground and constrains Alkin inside and locks him. And that's how Alkin was stopped. But Baji stands up, ready to fight his father as Despair had planned. Boss ignores him and goes to talk to Miranjo. She confesses that she was wrong. Baji remembers his father and brother, He tries to fight Boss, and the Big Four stand with him. They vow to protect him, but he steps forward as the man to defeat King Boss. Despa tells them that King Boss will kill the men if they face him, and their deaths will mean nothing. Damas decides that it doesn't matter. He'll fight with Baji. Baji stops him before it's too late by striking him with his needle sword, knocking him out. He then stands face to face with Boss, and their fight begins. Baji dodges Boss's attacks and strikes with his sword as well, destroying Boss's weapon and finally giving him a blow that weakens him. Boss crawls to Miranjo and apologizes before he tries to kill her, but Baji stops him. Miranjo tells Baji to destroy her so that she can return Data back to his body. When Baji is about to charge at Miranjo, Apias gets in between and begs Baji not to kill Miranjo. Baji once more approaches Miranjo and tells her that he wants to save her from the demon. He breaks the mirror, and Boss's soul leaves Data's body. The demon appears to devour Miranjo's soul. Data finds out that Baji's power was stolen by Boss when he made a deal with the demon. Baji asks Hokuro to shoot his arrow at the demon, but the demon just easily snaps the arrow. Despa asks Desa telepathically to strike it with his lightning, and he does. The captain of the underworld orders severs the demon's head off. Boss catches the hand and dips it until he gets a wish. He wants to free Alkin, but Baji cuts him off to tell him to save Miranjo instead. While they're arguing, Data is awake, and he steals the wish to revive Miranjo. The demon grants his wish. To utter shock and disappointment, Miranjo wakes up, and Data asks her to marry him. She cries but accepts. Despa accepts that his wish was stolen from him, and he asks for monetary compensation. Baji is happy and praised by Despa. Queen Hyling finally comes to find that everything is resolved, and that Data has asked Miranjo to marry him. Queen Hyling is in doubt at first, but Baji asks her to accept Data's requests, and she shows signs of acceptance. Data is asked to relinquish the crown to Baji, but Baji suddenly starts to panic. He gets very anxious when Data asks Baji to become king. He refuses because he doesn't think he's worthy. Cage gives Baji 1,000 years of death jutsu as a way to cheer him up and restore his confidence back. They all bow down to the new king, King Baji.